know someone in your neighborhood that has the most beautiful yard. Like, I'm talking, that grass is lush. All right, you could play checkers on their lawn because that's like the checkers are like there for you to do. Like, they have never left a children's toy on their lawn in their lives. All right, they got flamingos, they got lanterns, they got hay bales, they got snowmen. Depending on whatever the season is, they've got it. All right. And when we look around at when that happens, their house just seems to always has like a fresh coat of paint. Like, you're like, how did you do that again? That's crazy. And you're wondering, like, where do they have the time to do that? Where do they have the time? They must have their stuff together, right? What have they figured out that I haven't? Or what money do they have that I haven't got? What kind of time do they have that I don't? We look at the outside of people's houses, and there's this assumption that that must speak about something, that some kind of internal accomplishment that they have. Because of what we can see, we imagine that what we can't see must be immaculate. And if we're honest with ourselves, we at times can become motivated to get our own lawn cleaned up so we don't feel embarrassed. And maybe even so that our neighbors might assume that there's something together in us that we may not have. Some of us this morning have found ourselves in that kind of neighborhood spiritually. We look at someone else's spiritual lawn, someone's external, the things someone is doing or saying, and we assume that there must be something internally that they've got figured out that I don't. We look at the shape of our own lives, and we get discouraged or maybe even disgusted because we feel like we're never going to measure up. Because they never stopped going to church, but I did. Their kids look a certain way that mine don't. There's a spiritual tenacity that they carry, at least appear to, that I don't. And you measure against where you know you're at as a whole against what you perceive about what they're able to put out. Someone's external. And what I mean by that is someone's spiritual walk that you're able to see. So we look at other people and we find ourselves desperately wanting, or we've become perception experts. We have become spiritual landscape technicians. Our external looks beautiful. We look like we've got it all figured out. We know the right answers to say. We're plugged into the right things. Our kids look the part. They're even in the right school. And maybe we've wrongfully believed that playing this role is what it means to be Christians. But though externally we may feel like we've painted a good enough picture, whether we're aware of them or not, internally we've got some spiritual cobwebs, there's some mold, and we feel like if people ever really knew what you actually go to sleep thinking about at night, if people ever knew what you actually were struggling with, if people knew what was actually going through your mind right now, the things that you were wrestling with, the questions that you still have, they'd probably kick you out of here. It would be so bad. It would be so ugly. Externally, you've got it figured out, at least for now, but internally, you may feel like you're dying. So maybe you're desperately wanting a spiritual landscape technician. Thirdly, some of us in here genuinely believe that because our actions look better than those around us, we maybe know some things that other people have done in the past. Maybe we look at our own lives and it's easy to look down at those around us because, at least you're not them. At least your kids don't do that. And you've, whether intentionally or not, you have begun to puff up your chest, not out of a holy confidence that's based on who you are in Jesus, but that is based on sinful arrogance. We believe that because our external looks a certain way, then our internal is therefore good to go. But that's not Scripture. Because all of these three components and more are based on comparison against the people around us that has led us to stray away from the main thing. And I think I know why we do this. And I think we can be freed of this if we tune into what the Word says this morning. Are y'all ready? Turn in your Bibles to Mark chapter 12, verse 28. It's going to be on the screen. Eventually, we'll be in Matthew 23 if you're an overachiever and want to hold on to that, all right? But Mark chapter 12 is where I love doing that. Like, I love having both of the different scriptures figured out. Like, I have it like, I'm ready to turn. It's quick. That doesn't matter. Anyways, Mark 12, verse 28 says this. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked them, of all the commandments, which is the most important? So a teacher of the law asked Jesus a question, which in and of itself is pretty important to note. Because a lot of Pharisees, when they came to Jesus with questions, it was about trying to catch Jesus in something. They were trying to trip him up. They were trying to make Jesus look foolish so that they would look good. But this guy's approach is different, which is humbling. It's humbling to approach, because as a teacher of the word, you feel this pressure, and I've felt it. But even as somebody who's just been following Jesus for a long enough time, you feel this pressure to know all the right answers. You don't want to look dumb by asking the wrong question or the question that feels like it's too simple and it's too basic and you should have known this a long time ago. What a humble posture for this teacher to ask what we today might view as a simple question. That if we're not careful, we can go 20 years, 40 years, 60 years of our relationship with Jesus without asking a question because we're afraid of what people might think, we're insecure, or we feel like we should already know. But if we would have just asked, it could have propelled us forward in our faith, could have grown our faith and the faith of those around us. But we hold on to the question and we let it fester into frustration and bitterness. Because of this pressure that we feel to put up this external picture for the world to see, we don't ask nothing. We don't admit imperfection. We don't admit that we lack knowledge. Ultimately, because it would break our carefully curated perception we think that we've built, so our pride won't allow it. Listen to me. You are never too old. You are never too young. You have not been walking with the Lord too little or too much to ask questions about the Lord. He is not afraid of your questions. He's not going to be stumped by your questions. He's not going to be shocked by your questions. He already knows them. He already knows them. And far be it from us to arrogantly approach someone with a question with, you didn't know that already? The only reason we do that is because it makes us feel better about ourselves. Yes, somebody knew something and I didn't. It's childish, right? Ask the questions. Express your concerns. And don't make others feel stupid when they do the same. Be okay with not having all the answers and going to the Word and to other believers to seek godly wisdom like this Pharisee does in this moment. I gained a lot of respect for this man. Just like I gained respect for students and adults when they ask questions about the Word. Because that's brave. That's bold. Pretending to not need any help or to have all of the answers may put up an external perception of having it all together or of maturity, but it is actually cowardly. And it cripples you and the body of Christ around you. The spiritually mature person knows how to admit that they still have a lot of ways they need to mature and a lot of things they need to learn. So all that to say, the Pharisee asks, what's the greatest commandment? And verse 29 says, the most important one, this is Jesus answering, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So Jesus, quoting Deuteronomy 6, tells him, because Deuteronomy 6 is right after Deuteronomy 5, which is where Moses brought all the 10 commandments. And then he says, hear, O Israel, pay attention. If you weren't listening to all the other stuff I said, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love him. Love him. And we're going to talk about how in a minute. Love him. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. There's no greater commandment. In fact, Matthew's version of this same account, Jesus says all the law and the prophets actually hang on these two commands. That if we're not figuring these two out, it's a slippery slope. It's an easier decision for us to continually choose sinfulness. But let's take a closer look. When he says to love the Lord, he explains how, which is so loving. Because I think many of us have gotten stuck on saying, yes, I love Jesus, but we don't actually know how to execute it. I've been there. It says, love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And here's what I realized as I was preparing this message is there's 4 different ways. But in those 4 different ways that he explains for us to love him, 3 of those ways are internal, and only 1 of those ways is external. Heart, soul, mind is all internal ways that we love the Lord. Nobody sees your heart. Nobody knows what's in your mind. Nobody has a true gauge on your soul. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with loving the Lord with our strength. But I think we become so focused on taming our actions, on doing the right things, doing enough things, or so focused on the actions of others and doing what we're supposed to do that we've forgotten to love the Lord and allow him to work in us in all of these other ways. Most of the time, other people can see us love the Lord with our strength. It's tangible, it's palpable, and before we know it, rather than our strength being about how we can love the Lord, it's become how we can prove ourselves to man. You see how many chairs I picked up? Right, that's the meme. You see how much I've been serving? Listen, I'm so busy, done so much church stuff. It's become how we can keep up with the spiritual Joneses. Trying to prove ourselves to men. And it can become really unhealthy really fast. And that's where we find ourselves in those places where we're looking at our own and everyone else's external, and maybe our output just isn't what it used to be. Or we feel like we couldn't never measure up, or maybe we feel like we're crushing it. I mean, so-and-so has really fallen off. Wonder if he's drifting away from the Lord. And we just instantly judge the minute. We don't know what's going on in their heart. We don't know what's going on in their mind. We don't know where the Lord is taking them. We don't know the journey that he's taking them on right now. We don't know the grief that they're going through. We don't know the things happening internally in them. Shame on us for how quickly we judge in that way. Here's the deal. I get it. It's human nature. It is easy to look around at others and compare ourselves to where they are. To give ourselves a nice little shiny polish when we go to church, to externally address the things that might make us stick out in order to look put together long enough so that at least everyone can see here. To show everyone how we're loving the Lord with our strength. But we have to be careful because Jesus had some strong warnings for people that lived that way. He had some strong warnings for people that only loved the Lord with their strength. Because you know who was really good at loving the Lord with their strength in Jesus' time? Pharisees. Now, when we hear about Pharisees, we immediately think of so-and-so churchgoer that hurt us a long time ago, or so-and-so person that didn't line up and their actions look different, and man, I will never be like that person. And what we end up doing is we end up hyper-focusing on the one thing that one hypocrite did, and now I'm never going to be a Pharisee because I'm not going to do that one thing that one person did. All of the while, we're building ourselves up into the very thing that we're frustrated at and that hurt us in our past. That's not in my notes, but that's for somebody. Maybe it's for me. Matthew 23, verse 25 says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may also be clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others. Look at me. But within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. I don't want to be a whitewashed tomb, church. I don't want to appear beautiful, but be dead on the inside. Because if I'm honest, I struggle with painting a perception for everyone to see. I struggle with wanting you to think a lot of me in my flesh. I struggle with that. I don't just want to appear beautiful, but be dead. I don't want to have a house that's full of cobwebs and filth and mold, and I don't want that for you. I don't want that for you in your physical house, but I'm talking about your spiritual house if you're just tuning in. I don't want us to be those who've cleaned the outside of the cup just enough to appear right, but leave things on the inside uncleaned, untouched, and beginning to fester more and more things of the flesh. You ever heard the phrase, I never thought so-and-so was capable of that? First off, we are all sinful people capable of anything outside of the grace of God. But when we are shocked by someone else by something that someone else does that we can see, more often than not, in fact, I would counter that always, it's because they were experts at playing the external game, at washing the outside of the cup while allowing spiritual decay to happen internally where nobody else could see. And here's the thing. This isn't a place that we get to overnight. You think the Pharisees, when they chose to become Pharisees, to follow their rabbis, do you think their initial motivation was, I can't wait to look down on other people? I can't wait to look like the guy that everyone thinks poorly of. I can't wait to have a title that becomes a synonym for hypocrite. I just can't wait. It's going to be awesome. No. I mean, maybe, I don't know them personally, so maybe, I guess it's possible. But more than likely, they, like us, were there because they wanted a deeper knowledge of God's word. They wanted closeness with the Lord. But somewhere along the way, that desire for more knowledge became arrogance once they had some. It ceased to be about how they could seek to know more about God and became how they simply knew more about God than you. Somewhere along the way, when they were seeking righteousness, they began to love the feeling when their righteousness was seen and applauded. So much that their entire motivation for doing it shifted. Here's the thing. Like I said, the Pharisees were good at loving the Lord with their strength. You know what they did? Probably more than most of us. They gave to the needy. They prayed a lot. They fasted all the time. How many of y'all fast all the time? I'm just kidding, don't tell. I can't say that of myself. I'm not a faster all the timer. It's not true about me, but it's true about the Pharisees. They did it often. They were good at loving the Lord with their strength. But Jesus rebuked them in it. Why? Because they were doing it out of the wrong posture. They were sounding trumpets when they gave to say, look at this big check that I'm getting. You see all those zeros? Oh. Look at all that I'm doing for the kingdom. They were standing on street corners while they prayed to impress other people and say, look at me. Hello, everyone applaud the way that I just prayed. You know there's no wrong way to pray. You want to talk to the Lord? Talk to the Lord. There's no impressive way to make sure you say all the right things. Rebuke that in Jesus' name. They would give with trumpets. They would pray on street corners to be heard. And they would distort their face, a woe is me, Eeyore mentality when they were fasting so that they would get the attention of others. They were no longer seeking holiness. They were simply seeking to appear holy to others. Is that where we are this morning? The Pharisees became so fixated on doing, on putting together the outside for the praise of man, of washing the outside of the cup, that their true internal had begun to show. And the truth is, y'all, here's the reality. People are a lot less fooled than we want them to be. People are a lot less dumb than we think that they are in our minds. Nobody really sees my situation. I'm doing a really good job of hiding it. And I'm not saying that to give you anxiety this morning. I'm saying that to tell you to let it go. Quit putting on these masks and this pretense like everything's all right. You need one another. We need the Lord. We need to grow. We have not made it spiritually. There is no finish line until glory. But the Pharisees, like so many of us, became so hyper-focused on what they were doing for God, they forgot to seek God so that he could do what he wanted to do in them. We get so focused on what we want to do for God. And if we're honest, for others. We forget to seek God for what he wants to do in us. And the result becomes an external-based, morality-based religiosity that yields no transformation in ourselves or the people around us, but we're good people. I mean, look at everything that we're doing. Because they were focused on the external, even their righteous deeds were polluted by the flesh, and eventually that pollution was so toxic. Scripture says they'd been led away from any semblance of holy motivation and into greed and self-indulgence. That's what verse 25 says. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and plate, but on the inside are full of greed and self-indulgence. That's the route we are taking if we're only focusing on the outside. And that's where some of us find ourselves this morning. Maybe we started out with pure motivations. What started out purely has become external morality with no internal substance. And what happens in that space is our world, intentionally or unintentionally at first, begins to revolve around us. Be careful if your response to that comment was just, I know somebody just like that. Because if that's your response, ask yourself, is that out of true righteous indignation, or is it because you feel low-key frustrated that somebody else won't let their world revolve around you? It is so easy, church, to get stuck on this slippery slope of self-indulgence and greed. And here's the thing, making money, whether it's $20 for mowing the lawn for your parents for the first time, or $20,000 for the deal you made an hour ago, I don't know what y'all do. Those endorphins get released. It feels good. It feels freeing. You feel that pull of, if I just had enough of this, imagine what I could do. And before long, it's so easy for our lives to be wrapped around, if we just had more. Think of what I could accomplish. I would do so much good. I would be able to fill in the blank. So what could have started as rightly motivated desire to provide for your family, trusting the Lord's provision to provide for your family, can turn into a lust for money, a greed for money that pulls you away from any real time with the family that God has called you to love and that you say that you're doing it for. But listen, not all of us are greedy for money. Like, that's not my vice. But some of us, like the Pharisees, are greedy for attention. Some of us, that's a crippling idol in our lives. We can be greedy for all kinds of things, influence, power, whatever. If we become fixated on anything other than Jesus solving our problems, giving us the endorphins that make us feel good, we can slowly but surely be stuck in greed and self-indulgence, and we don't even realize that the way that we treat people now around us has begun to revolve around what they can do for us. We don't see anybody else's reasons. We don't care about anybody else's feelings, tell the truth. Because we're so concerned with our own feelings, our own comfort, our own peace, that we either feel like we deserve it, yet we feel like others don't, or better yet, we feel like it is owed to us. Listen, This is what we are owed, church. What I am owed, what we are owed is eternal damnation and separation from the Lord. But God, in his rich mercy and grace, died on the cross for us, rose again, beating death, so that we might undeservingly spend eternity with him. And anything beyond that is his blessing from the heavenly places that we are not owed. There's some internal work that needs to be done. The end of Matthew 23, verse 26 says, "First clean the inside, then the outside will take care of itself." First clean the inside, then the outside will take care of itself. If we are so focused, this is why I have so much grace for students, y'all, because some of these students, they may come into youth group for the first time. Without realizing it, they may say a swear word. Oh no, right? But how can I blame the dark for being dark? How can I only address these outward actions? I might say, hey, like, chill out, but if I just focus on this external, make sure you stop cursing, and I don't even focus on their heart, then what am I doing for them? I'm teaching them a moral religiosity that has nothing to do with heart change being transformed by Jesus. We need to be transformed from the inside out. Because if we just change our actions, we will do so out of a bottomless motivation because it's based on our own strength. Because you can only do something you hate for so long, right? And generally, when we're paying attention to the outside of our own cups, it makes it very easy to see, judge, and look down on the outside of someone else's. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log in your own? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there is a log in your own? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's. If we would allow the Lord to transform us from the inside out, the actions, the external, will follow. If we will give people grace and patience to allow the Lord to work on them from the inside out, the external will follow. So we're going to do some internal inventory this morning. And here's what I want. Jonah's just going to play some music in the background. We have a few minutes. Jonah's going to play some music in the background, and I don't want anybody to move from your seats. A lot of times we come to the altar, and I think that's powerful, and I think there's a physical representation of laying something down. But here's what I don't want, is I don't want anybody to succumb to the temptation that I need to do this so that other people see my own strength right now. So right where we're at, I want to invite you to do some internal inventory, to ask the Lord to reveal to you areas of your life where you've begun to live for yourself instead of him, where you've paid so much attention to the outside of the cup that you've missed what God's trying to do on the inside. And there's an old song, it's probably not that old, it's like 20 years old, but I'm going to put those lyrics up on the screen. We're not going to sing it, but the lyrics are, take my heart and mold it. Take my mind, transform it. Take my will and conform it to yours, O Lord. And then later it says, holiness is what I long for. We're asking God to do some internal work. So we're going to just play some music, even if the music doesn't work. I just want you to take some time to just do some internal inventory. Ask the Lord to reveal where your heart needs to be molded, where your mind needs to be transformed, and where your will and your desires need to die and be conformed to his.